Once is already strange enough, but this happened to me and my brother at two separate occasions, which is beyond strange, more like scary. The first weird thing happened back when I was 17 and he was 14. Our house has two stories. The first one is where the living area is, kitchen, living room, etc. And the second has our bedrooms. Both our rooms were exactly opposite to one another, and usually our doors were open in the summer due to the heat, cause converted attic, almost no insulation. One day, after coming back from college, I sat down in the kitchen to have dinner and just chill for a bit with a cup of tea before I went upstairs to do my homework. Not 10 minutes later, I heard my brother coming down the stairs from his room. He entered the kitchen and did a serious double take when he saw me. He asked, "What are you doing here?" I answered that I just came back and was eating dinner. He went pale and insisted that as he was leaving his room, he just saw me sitting in mine through the open door. He was adamant about me being upstairs 20 seconds ago. I was a bit weirded out, but we both chalked it up to him seeing things and laughed it off. Now, 12 years later, it happened again, just in the other direction. Nowadays, we are living in a different country, renting a flat together because it's more cost effective. My brother used to work at the nursery in town every weekday until 6 pm. I was usually home around that time too. Our sister lives in the same town as well, with her young kids. On that day, I came back from work and again sat in the kitchen to have dinner and chill a bit watching YouTube videos on my phone. Now, the flat is fairly small, located on the second floor, has a narrow staircase and very thin walls. Around 6:10 pm, I heard the entrance door opening and my brother coming up the stairs. As usual, I heard him drop his backpack in the hallway, something that annoys me to this day, and take his shoes off on the way to his room. Still in the kitchen, I called to him to come have dinner that I warmed up for us. He answered that he doesn't have the time, that he will just change from his uniform, and then he has to go to our sister to help her out with the kids. I called again, that he can eat something quick before he goes. He declined. I could hear him all the time, walking around his room, putting his shoes back on, grabbing his backpack, and rushing down the stairs. He said, "See ya later," before the door closed. Now, I went about my evening as usual, not thinking much about it. Some 2 hours later, I heard him come back home, doors opening, his steps on the stairs, shoes off, the usual. I met him in the kitchen, and he was still in his uniform, the green polo shirt. The thing is, since he works at the nursery, his uniform is usually covered in nasty stuff from the kids. Saliva, snot, paint, glitter, glue, food bits, etc. He doesn't ever leave home in it, especially when he's going to our sister's, not wanting to get any bug to her kids. I asked why he didn't change his shirt when he was home earlier. He looked at me, bewildered, and asked, "What do you mean when I was home earlier?" He said he went to my sister's straight from work. I know what I heard, so I started to argue with him. We talked, I offered you dinner, and you told me you don't have the time. It was just after I came back home from work. His answer was, "I left the work early today to go to sister's around 4 pm. I went straight to her. I wasn't here until now." Then who the heck I was talking to, and heard moving around the flat. Also, if it was an auditory hallucination, how did it know that he was going to visit our sister today? I didn't know about it until he told me. Where did I go? I had been raised in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but had moved to Wisconsin a few years prior. I was making the familiar drive from Wisconsin to Michigan to visit my dad, late at night. It's a 6-hour drive, and I wanted to do it while my 2-year-old would be sleeping. Being the Upper Peninsula, with nothing but woods and no stores, it was very dark. I hit a stop sign, where you can go left or right. Either way, you go to different parts of Michigan, and there is no way to wrap back around. I went right, like I always do. Within a couple of miles, I knew that something was wrong. The road was straight when it should have been curvy, but I brushed it off and kept going. These roads usually made me feel happy and nostalgic, but this time, I started getting a very unsettling feeling. Nothing felt familiar. There was a weird building far away that I had never seen before. It was huge, and while it looked normal, it was the type of large science laboratory or research facility, hospital type building that just doesn't exist in the Upper Peninsula. I told myself that maybe it was built in the few years I had been gone, and hey, everything looks different at night. But then, a few minutes later, I saw what was like a completely normal looking airplane in the sky, but it had flashing lights and was suspended in the sky. I know that things can look like they aren't moving when you are, but the plane was purple with flashing lights and had weird clouds or some kind of mist around it. The hair on my arms went straight up. I was covered in goosebumps. I turned on the radio, but none of the stations worked. Even the time on the dashboard was black. I hadn't seen a single car this entire time. I tried my phone, but it wouldn't work, which also meant no GPS to confirm where I was. I completely panicked and started crying, having no idea how far I had driven, so the mileage wasn't helpful. But it felt like I had driven about 20 or 30 miles and had not seen a single familiar landmark, just a straight road the entire time. I wanted to turn around, but also just kept driving, hoping that I would see something normal. Just as I decided to turn around and go back, I was back at the stop sign in the small town. My brain couldn't comprehend what was going on. I looked at my phone, and it was suddenly working. The radio was on, the clock was on. Not a minute had passed, but that couldn't have been true. It wasn't possible. I looked at my son, sleeping safely in the back, felt a relief and safety that I had never, or have ever to this day, experienced. I turned right, and I recognized everything as correct and normal, and made it the rest of the way with no issues. As soon as I saw my dad's house, I started sobbing. I woke him up after laying my son down, and I just held him, shaking and crying. He had never seen me like that, ever. We are not a big displays of emotion type family. My son is 18 now, and I still remember it like it just happened. My dad and I still talk about it. I get goosebumps even now when I tell him about it. I'll never be able to forget it or explain it. I try not to think about it too hard or too often, which is probably why it took almost 2 decades to write it down. But deep down, I think something bad happened. It makes me want to cry because I don't know if anything happened to my son, and that scares me. In retrospect, I don't think the plane was as purple, but the sky and clouds around it were, like so many different shades of purple, ones I had never even seen before. And it seemed far away, enough that I shouldn't have been able to notice such little details, but I absolutely did. There was also lightning, but like dry lightning, no rain. And it wasn't just one lightning at a time, it was a bunch, but with no thunder. The timing of when the lightning struck seemed to be a pattern though. I randomly met the same mysterious man in 2 different German cities. Then something even stranger happened. Something happened during my recent trip to Germany, and it's been stuck in my head ever since. I feel like I need to write it down somewhere. Maybe someone has experienced something similar. A couple of weeks ago, I traveled to Munster to meet a close friend. One afternoon, we were chilling in a small, quiet park, not a tourist place or anything. We were just laying on the grass when this old man, maybe in his late 60s, came up to us. He had green eyes, long hair, dressed normally, not homeless, but something felt off. He started speaking to us in a language that sounded like German, but it wasn't. He was talking super fast and making weird hand gestures, like a love sign, and movements that felt like he was trying to share energy or love with us. My friend whispered that we should just ignore him, that he didn't seem normal. So we did just that, and eventually, he left. A few days later, we went to Berlin for a huge protest. There were thousands of people there. After it ended, we were laying down again in a random spot with other people around. My friend was talking to a girl, and I was on my phone. I randomly looked up and saw the same man from the park in Munster. Same guy, same face, same clothes, same hand gestures, and the same energy. I ran to my friend and told him. We were both shocked. We approached him, but he didn't seem to recognize us. Still, he did the same thing. Same weird speech, same hand signs. At this point, we were just confused and a little freaked out. What are the chances of running into the exact same person in a completely different city, doing the exact same thing? But that's not even the end of it. A couple of days later, we were in a bar. My friend went outside to smoke when a man in his 40s came up to him and randomly started a conversation. Nothing too strange. Then, 2 nights later, we were at a club, and that same man showed up again. He walked past us, said hello, and sat somewhere not too close. About 40 minutes later, I suddenly felt someone tap my shoulder. I turned around, and it was the same guy, holding a pen, insisting that I take it. I told him no, it's not mine, but he kept holding it out toward me, like he really wanted me to take it. The vibe was really strange. My friend and I looked at each other, and we just felt off. So we left the club right after. Later, we kept thinking about it and wondering if these two guys were somehow connected. One kept repeating a message about love. The other kept trying to give me a pen, which felt more symbolic than random. Both appeared twice, both in completely different places, both out of nowhere. We are still trying to process it all. If anyone's ever had anything like this happen, I would love to hear your thoughts. We are open to any kind of interpretation, spiritual, logical, psychological, just trying to make sense of it. The road that appeared from nowhere. About 2 years ago, my partner and I took my mom to her dentist appointment. She insisted that she went to one an hour away, even though we have three in our tiny town. So we set off to the valleys, where her practice is. I should explain that we live in South Wales, UK, about an hour away from the valleys in a tiny ancient town. But my dad is from the valleys originally and still has family there, so we visit often. We put the postcode into Google Maps and everything was fine. Boring, normal, same as usual roads. But then, it told us to turn off into this tiny little lane. None of us remember ever seeing that lane or it being there, but just gathered that we never paid attention, given that we normally continued on down the road. Off down the lane we went, just wide enough for a single car, and that was pushing it. My partner commented on how scratched up the car was going to be from all the bushes brushing onto it, but we carried on our way. We eventually came out of the lane, and the only way I can describe it is that we were on top of one of the mountains there. There was a single track, again, barely wide enough for one car, let alone anything else. Not a road, but just a track. About 20 minutes into this track, it went past a little cottage. I'm talking one room up, one room down building with a rickety old wooden door and parts missing from the roof. We were all intrigued, but had to get to the appointment, so we carried on down the track and eventually came back to a normal road. We decided that we would go the same way back and have a better look at the cottage and its surrounding area, since none of us had even known that it existed. On the way back, we followed the road we came in on, but instead of Google Maps recognizing the road we wanted to turn onto to get back to the little cottage, it rerouted, so we couldn't find it for love nor money. It has bugged us ever since. We have asked people, searched the internet, looked at maps, gone back up and down and around the place where the turning was, but we have never found it again. It was strange. A few weeks ago, I traded in my old car at a dealership in Tennessee. It had been with me for years, but I decided it was time for a new one. So I did all the paperwork, handed over the keys, and drove away in my new car. I felt a bit sad, but also excited for a fresh start. A week later, after moving to Virginia, I went to visit a church for the first time. I parked my new car, got out, and stopped in my tracks. Right next to my car was my old car. Same make, same model, same color, and even the same little dent on the back. I couldn't believe it. I walked around it to make sure that I wasn't imagining things. The only difference was the new license plate. I looked inside through the window and saw the same little scratch on the dashboard. It was definitely my old car. I stood there, feeling weirdly connected and a bit freaked out. Out of all the places it could be, My old car had ended up parked right next to my new one, in a completely different state. I never found out who the new owner was, but it felt like my old car had followed me. It was like a strange coincidence, almost like the car was not ready to say goodbye just yet. I still think about it sometimes, wondering what the chances were of that happening. It was the winter of 2023, around Christmas. After putting my son down for a nap in his playroom downstairs, I went into the living room, sat on my couch, and started watching The Office on TV while folding laundry. When I was finished, I pulled my blanket over me and laid down on the pillow that my son had brought into the living room earlier that morning. I dozed off soon after. A short time later, I woke up to my baby crying. I remember looking out the window and wondering how long I had been asleep because it was dark outside. I checked my phone that was plugged into the charger on the arm of the couch for the time. It was almost 7. I specifically remember looking at the Christmas tree as I walked by. I walked back to the living room, change his diaper, walk into the kitchen to throw away the diaper, and make him a bottle. After I gave him his bottle, I walked back into the living room to lay back down on the couch. But my pillow and blanket were gone. The laundry was still folded beside, but the couch looked untouched. Even my phone was gone. I looked in all the rooms I had gone in. I looked even in the bathroom and thought that it must have fallen in the couch. Around that time, my boyfriend got home from work and I asked him to call my phone because I couldn't find it anywhere. So he rang my phone and we heard it ringing, but it wasn't coming from the couch or any of the rooms downstairs. The phone was ringing upstairs in our bedroom, but I hadn't been upstairs at all. I was freaked out at this point. We go up to our bedroom to find my phone plugged up to the charger beside my bed, and on the bed were my blanket and pillow, as if I was asleep in my bed the whole time. I was so confused because I know for a fact that I never walked up or down those stairs, and the TV in the living room was still on. I still think about it all the time, and the only way I can make sense of it is that I experienced a glitch in the matrix.